Hey everyone, welcome to Become the Change weekly web show. Hope you're well. My name is Sandy Levesque, coming to you from near Lisbon in Portugal, or Lisboa, as they say, Lisboa. So I hope you're well wherever you're watching. And today's topic is something that I'm really passionate about. If you know anything about me, you know that I've been traveling for the past year. And I got the idea for this topic because I was watching a webinar with a family that have been traveling for 5 years now around the world, haven't had a permanent home in 5 years, and one of their business partners was talking about how he had also started traveling after watching them do it, and he said that he used to do his thing on the internet in a home office, and then one day after watching them take off, live in Panama, live in South America, Central America, in Thailand, he decided, well, why am I always staying in one place? Why not just move around? And this webinar is going to help you start to actually make that a reality, because often we have these dreams and desires and wishes for things, and yet we don't really take action on them, and I'm sure that if you're here, you might have read some of the materials I put out about this webinar. That happens a lot. Like, a lot of people contact me or talk to me when they find out what I do, and just say, well, how do you do that? How is that possible? How do you make it work? How can you just, not have a permanent base and live a mobile lifestyle? And it does work. It didn't happen overnight, but there are some key things that I've put together which will help you really start to move forward with it. If you actually apply, if you just listen and tune in to feel good about traveling, then, that's cool. But, if you actually do the steps that I'm going to suggest here that I did myself, that were recommended to me by my mentors that had already been traveling, then I know that within probably a lot shorter space of time than you might believe, you can also be traveling. And so, just in case you don't know much about me, my name is Sandy Levesque. I'm from England. I used to be a campaigner and activist for women's rights. Got really ill, actually, and I remember having a moment when I was only about 27, and the campaign I was working on had become very successful very quickly. It's taken about 2 years, but in campaign terms, that's a really short space of time. And so we were negotiating with the British Prime Minister. I was going on the news, on the TV, on radio to represent the campaign. You're not talking about myself. I was talking about the issue we were campaigning about. And then something really strange started to happen. And that was that I started to have weird health problems and stuff like my nose bleeding for 20 minutes. Not just a short nosebleed, but like gushing of blood every single day. I went and had 3 blood tests. Doctors couldn't work out what was going on, why I was losing so much blood. And I began going to Parliament, where the British, like the Senate or the Congress in the US, the British Parliament, with a toilet roll in my handbag, just in case my nose began bleeding in a meeting, because it had happened and I had to run out. It was really embarrassing. And so I found myself thinking, well, this is really strange. I'm doing my dream job, being paid to be a campaigner, which was something I did for a long time as a volunteer, being paid to do that, having a successful campaign, but yet I don't really feel very happy. And I'm having these weird nosebleeds, I was having migraines, then I had cancer. And I just really felt like, and it was just the beginnings of cancer. Luckily it was found before it could progress. So it's kind of like the cancerous cells. But nonetheless, when you're 27 and all of that happens, it's a wake-up call. You start thinking, well, something's obviously not right here. I really felt like it was a message from somewhere, from my body, but also from beyond that, from just a message about how I was living. And I realized I was not really living. I was always working, always doing things for other people, for the causes that I was working for, and just didn't really place any priority on my own well-being or financial stability or enjoyment. I just literally worked all the time, and that made me realize that it wasn't a healthy way to live, and also that I was focusing on negative problems. And I won't go into that. You probably heard me speak about that before. But what the relevance is with this topic is I wonder where you might be doing that. If you're here, there's obviously something that's drawn you here. Are there places where you're living as though your life is just never going to end? I realized I was doing that, And this book that I'm going to be referring back to a lot today, The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, was a really great help with that, because it made me realize how I was waiting to be essentially retired before I was truly doing things that I dreamt of doing, like traveling, like writing, like going to the beach, you know, like spending time in nature, hanging out with friends, learning new things, seeing new things, and not focusing all the time on problems. And I was just sort of just putting it off, you know. And a lot of us do that. You know, a lot of people are so caught up in the daily life, of the grind of life, you know, trying to get everything ready, the kids to school, to work, to get your work done, to get the bills paid, to get, you know, to have a social life as well, and to have everything balanced. And that can often mean that your dreams, the things that would really get you excited, you know, that would really make you like, yeah, I can't wait to do that, or would make you just so enthusiastic about what you were doing, they just kind of get put to the side. And I'm not going to go into that too much, because I think a lot of people do realize that what I see is the issue is rather people taking action on that, because you can change it. And what I wanted to share with you is you don't have to have saved up, you know, 10,000 euros or dollars to start traveling. You know, when I started, I was on just breaking even with what I was doing. In fact, I was barely better than broke. But I began traveling, and my situations got better and better because I chose to travel, and then the money came. And I'm going to go into this in a bit more detail just in a second here. But that's the first key point. Is there's actually 4 key things that you can take away from today's webinar that will help you start to make this a reality. And when I said in the promotional stuff for this, you know, today, now, I obviously don't mean that tonight, you know, just get your passport and just fly to, you know, Panama or fly to Australia and that's it. It's going to take a bit of planning, and I'm going to get into that as well. But the energy of I'm having this now, that is something you need to have. And this is really important, because if you have it as a kind of, yeah, I'll do it in next year, 2015, after the new year, or I'll do it after, you know, after this happens, what happens is you push it away into the future further and further. And I've done this, so speaking from personal experience here, but you push it away, and you actually start to, you disconnect from that initial inspiration and idea that you had in the first place, because that had its own momentum. You know, that was something. That was an inspirational idea you had. Oh yeah, I could do that, or I could go there. I want to do this. You know, when you just kind of say, well, I'm not even going to think about it until next year, it's almost like you've just opened a door and then you just close it. So the way to actually keep the door open is to have the energy that this is what I'm doing right now. I'm taking one step towards it every single day, even if I'm not sure exactly how it's going to happen. Because in the past 12 months, I've lived in 5 different places, in the Corbière in France, in a place called Tourette in France as well, and then Villefranche-sur-Mer, which was one of the most beautiful places ever, and a really exclusive bay on the Riviera of France. Then I went to Toulouse in southwest France, and now I've come to near Lisbon in Portugal. And I've also traveled to America 4 times for little trips. So not so much, I don't really consider that traveling, to be honest, because it's so quick. It's more like a vacation, you know, or a holiday. But I've spent time where I've got to know an area. I've got to get my skin, you know, it's got under my skin, and I've really started to understand the place I'm in 5 different times in the past year since I began traveling. And it started with the choice to do that. Even though I didn't know how, I actually decided that in February last year, and I began in August. So it wasn't an overnight thing. It took about 6 months, but that's not that long, really. And I didn't save up a lot of money because I just didn't have any extra. I was barely keeping my head above water. But what did happen was that I read this book, which I'm going to recommend you read. You might have already read it. If you haven't, then, and you want to travel, you absolutely have to read it. You know, the tagline is, escape the 9 to 5, live anywhere, and join the new rich for a reason. This book is literally one of the biggest things that helped me start to travel. And you know, it's a really big book, so I'm actually going to pick out some chapters that you can literally go into and get specific information from, because there were some that I kept referring back to over and over. But I'm actually going to just share my screen with you because I have some really simple slides, not that many, but I just find it helps people to understand information easier when there's a visual element. But I'm also going to stay on screen here. I've found a way to do it. So let me just quickly share my screen with you guys. And if you have any questions or comments, then feel free to leave them in the Q&A box. I've got that open, so I will see it. And it'd be great to hear from you. So, so here we go. So the first thing you want to do, oh yeah, now I just wanted to also say, I actually wanted to put some pictures into this to show you proof that I have been traveling. Because I know some of you guys know me, but some of you don't. Some of you have been referred here, and some of you have just stumbled on this on the internet. So I have, I was going to just show you my Facebook pictures just to show you some sort of proof. You can go back and have a look, because every time I try and post pictures in Google presentations, they just don't work. So very quickly here, just show you some pictures. But so it's going to be quite slow. Okay, so this was where I was in the Corbière. This box here that's changing pictures. Then I moved to here, which is Vence, France, up in the hills. That's my dog. Then, oh, I didn't create any other albums after that. It's a good idea to create albums, guys. And then I was in Villefranche-sur-Mer, Toulouse, and now where I am here, which is on the coastline of Portugal, which is at the very western edge of Europe. Literally, that's the Atlantic. America is just the other side. So I began traveling a year ago, and the first thing I started with was a burning desire to do that. Even though I was so broke at the time, I was literally just able to pay my rent, to feed myself and my dog, to pay the bills, and that was literally about it, and to start an online business, which was what I was doing. So, you know, but you have to choose it first, and there's actually an amazing story which really illustrates this. Oh, oops, I did not want to do that. I just wanted to show, hello. Yeah, so there's an amazing story which is from James Wedmore, and basically James Wedmore is a videographer. He helps people make videos on YouTube. Just trying to find a good place to put this here, and he has a story about how when he was starting out as an entrepreneur, he's very successful now, multiple six-figures guy, but when he was starting out, he wanted to go to an Anthony Robbins seminar, and he wanted to buy tickets for his girlfriend because it was her birthday and she wanted to go as well. So he called them up to find out how much the tickets were, and the tickets were $1,000. Trying to look at you guys here, $1,000 per person. And at that time, he just made a lot of payments out of his own account, and he had about less than, I think, $10 in his account. So obviously he couldn't afford them. And so he didn't know what to do, but he asked them, well, is there any chance of doing a payment plan? And they literally laughed in his face and put down the phone. Not very pleasant. So he was just thinking, well, what am I going to do? I don't have any money coming in. I don't have any money right now, but I really want to go. And he says he just decided that somehow he was just going to find a way. Like, whatever it took, there was just no way they were not going to be there. And I don't know if you can feel, even as I said that, there's like this decisive energy where you just decide that you will not accept any other outcome except whatever it is you want to do. Now, that's what a burning desire is, when you just, it's like you say to the universe or to infinite intelligence or God, you know, whatever you call it, but you just say, this is happening. I don't know how. I need your help. I'm going to do whatever it takes, but this is happening. And he did that. And nothing happened. You know, for 2 days, nothing happened. And then he met up with an old friend that he hadn't seen in ages, and they were playing tennis. And she asked him, actually, what are you doing now? What are you up to? So he explained that he makes videos, and he helped people to make videos. And she said, well, I need one for my work. Do you think you could make it for me? And he was like, yeah, sure. They began talking about it, and it turned out she didn't have any money to pay him. So guess how she wanted to pay him? With 2 tickets to an Anthony Robbins seminar in their area. It was amazing. And he didn't know, she didn't know that he wanted to go. He hadn't told anyone about this. And he said he literally dropped his tennis racket, his jaw went like this, and he just couldn't believe what had just happened. And so it's like that with traveling. If you want to travel and you're watching this, you know, if you're here, I know for a fact that there's a part of you that wants to travel, perhaps more than you are right now. And I probably should have said at the start, travel can be all kinds of things. You know, I actually posted about this on my Facebook wall not long ago. To some people, travel is, you know, going on with a backpack and moving from place to place. Other people, it's living in a place for 6 months and then moving on for another 6 months. It could be having different homes in different places. You know, you have to figure out what kind of travel you want to do. But the first thing you want to do is to actually choose it. Because if you're sitting there waiting for, you know, $10,000 to just pop into your account so you can go off and travel, or for some mysterious magic way of money coming to you so that you can travel, you know, it's the wrong way around. You need to choose it and then wait for it to come. You know, the money will come. It doesn't mean you just sort of sit around and twiddle your thumbs. You have to take action on things, but that choice, that initial, yes, this is what's happening, is what is really, it's almost like the setting lighting a match to a fire, you know, where you've got like sticks and fire starters and paper, whatever, and then you choosing to go is like that match that just gets lit and then poosh, the fire starts, and the fire does not go down unless something blows it out. So that's your burning desire. And I just realized that's probably why it's burning desire, because it's like a match. So choose travel before you have the money. And in fact, I can give you a personal example of how this actually happened for me as well, because when I started traveling, I had just started to see some good income from my business, which was going to allow me to travel. And I'm going to talk about how to do that. But it wasn't completely sustainable, you know. It wasn't like a set amount each month, or it was just I'd only had one good month. And so I had a point after about 8 months, well, 6 months after 5 or 6 months after I made this choice, lit my match, I had a choice where I could either put off my traveling plans for a year and teach another year of dance classes, which is what I was doing at the time, or I could not schedule more classes, because in France it goes from September to September, like the school year. So this was July I'm talking about, and I had to choose, okay, do I organize stuff for September, or do I just take a chance and follow my heart and do the dream? And obviously I didn't schedule any classes, and I followed my heart, and I didn't know how I was going to fund it, to be honest. But what happened was that out of the blue, some work came to me, online work that I could do from anywhere, with people that I knew, that I trusted, and it just worked out amazingly well. The timing was just perfect. And so that was another way where I know that my choice to actually just follow my heart and do the traveling, it led to things coming my way. You know, it's like the universe then conspires with you, like Paul Keller says, to make it happen. But if you don't first of all want it, it doesn't know what it's like it's waiting for you to place your order. And if you're waiting for the money, you're never placing your order, you know? You have to place your order, and then the food will come. Okay, so I'm just going to come back and check there's no questions on anything here. So, okay, cool. So if anything's not making sense, just let me know, guys. And then the second part of this is have a clear plan. And actually, the funny thing with all of this is, you know, you might have done personal development too. I know I've done a lot of it. And what I found is that if you take away the languaging, which often can be quite different depending on what you're doing, what modality, or who you're reading, listening to, when you take away the languaging, often the basic principles are the same across many different modalities. So, for example, the structure I've got here, which we're going through, like there's 4 parts to it. I've actually, I found this in Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, because he uses this as a formula for creating any kind of wealth or any kind of projects. starting with a burning desire, having a clear plan, and then the next steps, which we'll get to in a second. But it just struck me that I've studied other things where they've talked about this kind of stuff in different ways, and it's interesting that if so many different modalities are speaking about it, there's obviously a reason for that. It's because it works, okay? So once you've got your burning desire and you just choose that you're going to go, and again, it doesn't have to be like, tonight, but I would set yourself a time frame. And this comes to the second part, which is have a clear plan. What kind of travel do you want to do? I talked about this just now. Do you want to move around a lot? Do you want to be kind of stationary in certain places for a bit of chunks of time? Do you want to stay for a long time somewhere and then just take 2 months off to go and travel? It's up to you. There's all different kinds of ways, but you need to know what you want to do and where do you want to go, obviously, how long for, and how will you fund it, and then to start trimming down. So I'm going to go through these in a bit more detail. But basically, I would set yourself a time frame. Like, I think personally a year is a good time frame to have. It's enough time to actually get organized, unless of course you have some kind of mobile income already. If you already have that and it's working, it's been sustainable for more than 3 months, then you could just take off really soon. But if you have an income which is reliant on a local business, I would give yourself probably a year. This is just my opinion. I'm not saying this is like the exact same way to do it. It took me about 8 months, but I would recommend about 8 months to a year to start building what's required to do this and to start planning it. So that's just my personal take on it. Some people would say less time. Some people would say more. I think a year is just a good time, but probably it could probably be sooner than that, like 8 months or something. But anyway, choose some kind of time frame, because if you don't, it's just kind of it's going back to what I said earlier about just casting it off into the future without any real sense of when it's going to happen, or that you're going to make it happen. And then choose obviously what kind of travel you want to do. And something that I can recommend from this book, there's a whole chapter in it. It depends what edition you've got. I've got the updated version with case studies because I wanted to read about people who had applied what was in the book. And so in the updated version, there's a chapter on mini retirements. It's chapter 14. This is a really good chapter to read for this whole topic, because it's all about embracing the mobile lifestyle. And so one of the things that he suggests, if you don't know where to go, is to pick a region, like Europe or Asia, a continent basically, and then travel around until you start to get a sense of which place you like the most, or like he says, for example, he went to Europe, but he didn't know where he wanted to stay, and he started in London. This is Tim Ferriss, the author of this book I'm talking about. And he started in London, but then he ended up really enjoying Berlin. So what he did was he came back to Berlin and stayed there for another 6 months. So what you can do is you can travel somewhere to various different places and then come back to the ones that you really like. Or you can just decide ahead of time where you want to go. That's actually what I did. I just had a sense that I wanted to come to Portugal, for example, because it was really strange. It was really energetic. A friend suggested it, and it felt a lot more fun than where I was initially intending to go, which was Italy. And so I just followed my gut, basically. I didn't know anything about Portugal, don't speak Portuguese, never been here, and I began reading about it, and then all the logical parts of it made sense. It just sounded like a really good place to come to, and I've been so happy that I did. So there's obviously different ways you can choose where you want to go. And that's not usually the big problem I find for people. It's more the biggest issue I think that holds people back from making travel a reality is simply the belief that you can do it and waiting for money or time to show up. And someone once said to me something that really helps me whenever I feel like there's not enough time to do things. They said that time is like jelly. When there's something you want to do, everything else will eventually just mold around it. you know, like jelly does. You know, like jelly that's like, brrr, when you touch it, it just bounces back into shape. Well, this is the same. Like, if you really want to travel, you will find that other things will just mold around that desire. I've seen it happen for myself. I've seen it happen for lots of other people. So there's no perfect time. You know, it's like, and Tim Ferriss talks about it in the book. He says, you know, there's no perfect. If you ask any parent, did you wait for the perfect moment to have your child? And they'll say no. They just had the child when you know, when they just did. And it's the same with this. You know, if you just say to yourself, okay, next year I'm making this happen, I know for a fact that you will. And if you do, please tell me about it, because I would love to know. It'd be so funny to know that, you know, watching this webinar helped you move forward with that. It would be great to know that. So have a clear plan, decide what kind of travel you want to do, where you want to go, and then this is a really critical point. This is something that people always ask me about, is how are you going to fund it? You know, I'm a big believer that the best way to travel is having an online business. And I have to say I am biased because I am an affiliate for one, because that's what I decided to do. But it's just simply what's helped me be the most free compared to anything I've done. Because when I actually started traveling really about 5 years ago, I left my hometown of London. I moved to France, which admittedly I'm actually half French, so it wasn't exactly, you know, like I moved to Brazil or something. But I had never lived in France. My culture is very English, so it was a different, like a real culture shock. And initially, I set up local businesses. I went to Toulouse. I set up a local business. It took about 6 months to take off, and then it really took off. And then I decided I didn't want to stay there. It was really flat. It wasn't near the ocean or the sea, no mountains. And I love nature. So I decided to move to Nice to be near the sea. So I moved my business, and I thought it would be fairly easy because I'd already built up a successful business in one place. So I was still doing the same thing, and I was hoping that my reputation would kind of carry across to the new place. But actually it didn't do that at all, and I had to start from scratch, and it was really difficult. It was kind of a bit naive to think I could just take off and it would be the same. My income completely dropped. And it was just quite mentally exhausting to start from scratch, and also the market was a bit different. So it was just a really good learning curve, and I realized I don't want to keep doing this. This isn't fun, you know. To move a local business from one place to the other, it's literally like dragging a bag of bricks. You know, people say brick and mortar businesses. Well, that's how it felt when I moved city, and it was like dragging a bag of bricks with me. And I dropped most of them in the initial city. So I had a moment where I was just really exhausted, tired, feeling really burnt out, not sure what to do because I'd left campaigning because of this illness. I thought I was doing the right thing by teaching dance, but I just felt very unfulfilled, really. And that led me to realizing I wanted to do something with word, with writing, with sharing my ideas. And the internet came as an idea that's where I could do it. And then also, initially it was so that I could just spread my message more effectively. But then I started to realize, well, hang on, this could also allow me to travel, because I was coming into contact with a lot of people who were traveling. And I'm going to get to this in the fourth point, come back to it. And I've got a really funny story about it. But basically, it made me realize that I could just start moving around. And that's when the burning desire just took hold, you know, like the flame was lit. And once I had the idea in my mind, I was not going to let it go until it became my reality. And so it took about 8 months. But, you know, having an online business allows you to have the freedom to do that. So Tim does talk about different ways of doing that. He calls it a muse. Different business models you can use. In the book, chapter, I just realized I didn't look that up. Oh yeah, income autopilot. So that's chapter 9, finding the muse. And I have to say, I actually, rather than create a business like that from scratch, where you for example, you create a product and you set up the systems on the internet to sell it, I actually use a system where it's already created. a system that's proven to work. I've been using it for a year and a half now. I find it really, really easy to use. It's not, well, simple to use. Easy is not the right word. It does take, you have to work it as well. It's not like you just sign up and then it deposits money in your bank account, but it does work. So I'll be showing at the end how you can get information about that. But basically, nuts and bolts is find something online that will help you travel, because to me that's just the easiest way to do it. It means you don't have to do it on a budget, because you can be earning income as you're traveling. In fact, your travels can become part of your lifestyle, become part of your marketing, can inspire other people, because so many people would like to travel more. We live on a beautiful planet, probably one of the most beautiful ones for a long way in the galaxy, and people want to look at it and explore it and get to know it and see different parts of it. Especially now that we can travel with planes and all the stuff we have, it's like one of the best times in history to do that. So, if that's what you want to do, then you need to find some way of separating your time from your income. I mean, you can do it on the internet. You can give sessions and provide a service online, but you also, I would say, you want to have some kind of products that can be generating income for you 24/7, because that will help you become freer. Because if you're traveling but you have to work 9 hours a day, you're not really going to have time to see much. And I actually know people that have been there and done that. So you want to make sure how you're going to fund it. Let me just move down. And this is a really critical point, and I got this from the book again, from the chapter on mini retirements, chapter 14. If you're taking notes, you want to write that down. I started to trim down 6 months before I left. So by trimming down, I don't mean I began to lose weight. I mean, I began, the book really helped with this. I began having the mindset, okay, of I'm leaving soon. Do I really need this? With everything in my flat, my apartment, anything I was going to buy, I started to have that mindset of, well, would I put this in my suitcase and take it with me? When I arrived here in Lisbon, in Portugal, my friends at the house where I'm staying were like, well, where's all your stuff? Because all I had was a suitcase and a sports bag and my dog. And they couldn't believe that I had stuffed all my things into that suitcase. And it's a big one, massive suitcase, biggest suitcase in the galaxy probably. But but they were amazed. And when I first started, I had an apartment full of stuff. But I decluttered so much. I sold all my furniture. I began selling some of my electronic stuff. I gave away things I didn't want. Every week for about a month, I just decluttered a specific area in my flat. So I didn't do it all in one go, because I think that's just the fastest route to suicide. But what I did was I would pick, for example, my closets, my wardrobe, and my clothes, and I would say, okay, I'm going to declutter. If I was about to go to a desert island, would I take this? And then I would do it again, or I would pick my electronics. I seem to have loads of weird plugs and gadgets and stuff that I never used, but I carried around with me for years. And CDs, I copied all my CDs onto my MacBook. I sold my car. I just started to trim down my lifestyle. And Tim suggests doing that about 3 months before you leave. I actually started to do it about 6 months before, and I really liked that, because it kept me excited about what I was doing, because I could feel that each time I did that, I was sending a message to the universe that, yes, I am going now, watch me, And so I think you could start right now, start tonight. Have a look in your apartment, your house, and say, okay, if I'm really going to do this and start traveling in a year's time, or make travel more part of my lifestyle, what could I change with what I have now? And it doesn't mean you have to get rid of all your stuff. I know some friends actually who sold all their stuff, started traveling, and then had to come home because their kids missed home so much and were really unhappy traveling. So they've sort of had this learning curve of, why did we sell all our stuff? It's actually not the first time I've heard that happening. I've also had lots of families who carry on traveling, by the way. It's not, I don't want to paint a picture of doom here, but I would say, if you have a lot of stuff, and especially if you have a family perhaps, perhaps consider storage. You know, Tim Ferriss talks about that in the book. He puts some of his stuff in storage. He kept a flat. He didn't become completely mobile. So there's different ways to do it. But I do think when you start, just stop accumulating stuff you don't need. That basically is another way of putting it, because a lot of us do that. And I realized I was doing it a lot. And this helped me to stop doing that, to just feel a bit more relieved as well. Like I had more space around me in my flat. And I felt like I was lighter, you know, because I didn't have all this stuff just hanging around. You know, there's a great sketch by Greg Carlin, the comedian, or George Carlin, about stuff. It's really funny. And maybe I'll put a link to it in the event description. But basically, he just has a sketch about how much time we spend looking after stuff that we never really use. And you realize you don't need that much often to really do the things you do every day. So start trimming down, and then that's 3 months before is what Tim recommends. Oh no, I went right on it because it's going to mess it up. But you can do it, you know, as early as you like, and then automate. He suggests 2 months before you leave to start automating everything, and that means like your bills. Make sure that you become paperless, basically, so that nothing, you know, arrange for your mail to be forwarded to someone. Try and have paperless statements with your banks, your credit card companies, whatever you use, and just start to look at where you can really untether yourself from anything that keeps you, you know, where you have to be in an area, you know, like contracts and stuff where you need to be like receiving paper statements. You know, tell your companies that you're going traveling for a year and you won't be there. And, you know, I started to realize, okay, I'm not going to just blindly create another contract for my phone for 2 years, because I actually want to start moving, and I probably won't be in this country for that long. So you can do things like get a phone and unlock it so you can put SIM cards in it with the countries that you visit. That's what I've done. I use an iPad for social media, because sometimes it's fun to have, you know, pictures and stuff. Oh. And you can actually even get like I don't have this yet, but some kind of 3G card for iPads, so that you can use Wi-Fi in the same way that a smartphone would, and then have, you know, another phone which you just put SIM cards into, or you could just keep a smartphone. So, you know, I have a pay-as-you-go phone and an iPad. And then the final preparations. So this kind of depends on what kind of traveling you're doing. I'm not going to go into it right now because I think it can vary so much. There's a lot of detail in the book in chapter 14. Again, I didn't refer to that as much. What really helped me with my process of traveling was starting to eliminate. That was just the biggest breakthrough I had. And then automating stuff. So I wasn't, it felt so freeing as well, guys, like to just be, you start to feel like a bird that's just getting rid of all these chains, you know, that have been keeping you to one location. And, you know, I know they're not just chains, they're things that help you talk to people, help you use your phone wherever you are. You know, I'm not saying all contracts are bad, but to become mobile and not have that many things that you have to pay every month, you know, like a gas bill, electricity bill, and TV license, taxes for your area, like God, like when I think of all the fixed costs that I had for my rent when I was living in France and what I have now, it's just mind-boggling. You know, you can literally trim your life down so much and stay in nice places that a lot of people don't realize. You know, it's the same price often to stay in a nice apartment as it is to rent a hotel or a hostel for 4 days. In many cities, you can actually get a whole apartment to yourself for the same price for a month. So, you know, you can actually free yourself of loads of those bills by traveling. That's something that I've really enjoyed. Okay, so then so that's your final preparation. So remembering this was step 2, have a clear plan. Step 3 is to tune out naysayers. And this might sound obvious, but every single traveler I've spoken to, and I've interviewed quite a few over the past year, and obviously spoken to a lot that I've met, everyone says the same thing. You know, when you decide that you're going to start traveling more, people will people will kind of be surprised and often will unconsciously project their own doubts about being able to do it onto you. You know, even if they don't mean to, it will. I find it is quite harmful because unconsciously you start to sort of take it on. You know, it's just there in your mind, and I think the best thing is just it helps to make a public declaration of what you're doing. You know, so not to keep it secret, but then you don't have to tell everyone about it all the time. You know, be very selective on who you talk to about it, because a lot of people who are too scared to do what you're doing will kind of just tell you that, you know, and say, are you sure you're going to be able to do it? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And I found that, you know, I was teaching dance classes, and a lot of my students, when I told them what I was going to do, I could tell they were surprised, and they were like, wow, how are you going to do that? And they had this kind of this image of it being really difficult and this big like change and this big traumatizing experience of uprooting your life, and you know, and it just felt very very heavy, you know, everything they were saying. And I just decided to stop talking about it with people like that, because every time I had a conversation with people who were naysayers, basically, even if they didn't mean to be, it made me doubt what I was doing a little bit. So I really advise you not to, you know, feel free to like make a public declaration about it, but be aware of who you speak to in depth about it, and that will really help. And that's actually something that Napoleon Hill says when he says about the 4 things that are basically required for any kind of success in any endeavor is to, he doesn't say naysayers, I think he has some other way, but tune out people that will try and talk you out of it or tell you, try to protect you. Like even if they're family, even if they're relatives and friends, he's like, no, don't take advice from them, only take your own advice and people who have done what you want to do, what you seek to do. And that leads me to number 4, which is to find partners in believing. And I actually just heard this today from one of my friends on another hangout. It was we were talking about masterminds, and he said that one of his mentors calls it finding partners in believing. So people that are like you, people that like to travel, people that have seen that it's possible, you know, it doesn't have to be a whole group of them, but find 1 or 2 people, or find some kind of community. You know, there's loads of Facebook travel groups. I'm part of an online community which has loads of traveling entrepreneurs in it, and you know, there are ways. If you seek it, it will come. But make that a priority to find people who are doing what you want to do, and who are already doing it, and who are interested in it, who believe in it, who believe that you can do it because they've seen that other people can do it, they've seen that they can do it, and that will really help, because it just helps to make it more real, and that helps to make it more of a reality. It takes it out of that dream space, because a lot of people put travel in this weird box of like this dream they want to do in the future, and what I'm talking you through here is a way to actually bring it into your present, to make it a real thing, you know, like a reality, a real thing, not just some airy-fairy hope that you have sometime down the line, you know, which is as vague as you can be, but that's what so many people are when it comes to traveling. So find partners in believing, people who share your love of travel or your desire to travel and are either already doing it or can help you do it. And that will just help. It's almost like it sounds obvious, but a lot of people don't really seek this out. And when you consciously say to yourself, okay, who can I put in my mastermind? Who could my mastermind be? You will find them. That's exactly what I did. I asked for help from the universe, infinite intelligence, you know, what would it take for me to find a great mastermind partner? And then a few days later, I was out hiking, and one came to me who had just traveled and moved to Costa Rica. You know, so that stuff will happen. That's the 4 things that I recommend going through if you truly wish to make travel a reality. The final thing I wanted to say is that, as I mentioned earlier, I am part of an online community which has entrepreneurs who are traveling that use a system which is like a muse, an online business. And I will say it's not like something that you can just plug into and boom, next week start traveling because it will pay you regular checks. It doesn't work like that. It's a skill set. It's learning about online marketing, learning about the internet, learning what's actually involved, what works and what doesn't, and learning, what you enjoy on it. Because not everyone wants to do everything on the internet. There's aspects of it that you might really like depending on your personality, and other aspects that you might not. Like I personally use a lot of video marketing and Facebook marketing because I like to speak and I like to write. So those things fell into my natural interests. For you, it could be different. You might be more analytical and enjoy doing things like ads, Facebook ads or YouTube ads, and watching how many people click your stuff and how many people like buy whatever you have to offer. But basically, the community I'm part of, it trains people in online marketing, and it allows you to build a business at the same time, because you can actually earn commissions from the courses that you sell as an affiliate. So there is all kinds of training and amazing stuff going on, and I'm in a team which is part of the bigger community. I actually see it as a movement, because I believe that it's empowering people to become the change they want to see in the world. Like most people, when you speak to them, they don't like having their friends be depressed all the time because they don't enjoy their work. They don't like watching their cousins, I'm speaking from personal experience here, hate Sundays because they know they've got to go to work on Monday. What if more people didn't have to do that? And what if there was this big movement of people that were using new technologies to really work in an efficient way, travel, to do whatever they want to do? Maybe it's not travel, but to do things that make them come alive, rather than just kind of getting by. I truly believe we'd have a different planet, because the energy would start to change. People would be happier. And so that's my vision. I'm putting together an army of conscious change makers, I call it, people who want to do something in the world, who want to have the time and the money to contribute to things and to use the internet to do that. And for me, part of that is actually becoming that change. It's inspiring people by actually doing it, not just arguing about it should be possible to, which is what I used to do as an activist, but actually just showing people that you can do it, that you can start from scratch, from zero, and actually start to break out of the matrix, start to break out of that way of living where you just get by. You don't really go crazy in life because you're just always keeping your head above water. And I lived like that for a long time. So, if you are called to do something online, then click on the link below this video or get back to whoever referred you here, and you can get more information about the movement that I'm part of and what we do, the news, the business model that we use. And just be aware, it's not an overnight thing. It will take work. It will take being consistent. But all I know is that if you truly wish to do it, you can do it. I started from scratch as a complete newbie. I didn't even know how to embed YouTube videos of different sizes, which is really basic. I didn't even know what a capture page was. You might not know what that is either, but I didn't know much about online marketing at all, and I've learned so much in the past 18 months. I spoke on a webcast to over nearly 2,000 people 3 times last week because of successes I've been having in my business in the past few months. And I just was so inspired by that, because I know how low I felt when I started. So no matter how low you might feel, or maybe wherever you are, maybe you already have some online skills, it's a system that works, and it will work if you work it. So I'm going to wrap things up. I'm going to check if there's any questions. So let me know, guys, before we finish up here. And I'm going to just stop sharing my screen and come back. There you go. So cool. So I hope this has been useful to you. I would love to hear your feedback on where you'd like to travel to, what your plan is following on from this webinar. Where would you like to go? What would it be like if in a year's time you look back on this webinar and thought to yourself, wow, because of what I went through, which is actually quite simple, but sometimes you just need someone to show you that it's not as difficult as you might think. Imagine if a year from now you could be like I am. Literally, I can see the ocean from here. In fact, before coming to do this web show, I was actually at the beach watching surfers. I wasn't actually surfing because I'm a bit of a chicken, haven't built up the courage to do that yet. Mm. But I was watching amazing surfers ride the waves, and I just, what if in a year's time you could be sitting somewhere doing that, or whatever you would like to do? Maybe you prefer the mountains, or maybe you want to go to Antarctica. Maybe you want to go to the Australian outback. That's somewhere I would like to go. But you have to choose it first. So if you haven't chosen travel, or whatever kind of travel you want to do, whether you want to move around a lot or just spend some time somewhere and then move on to somewhere else, or simply just go on more trips, then but make that choice to do that and just declare to the universe that you are going to do it no matter what. In fact, you could make a video or some kind of, if you're online, you're doing any kind of online stuff, then make a video or a blog or some kind of public proclamation of what you wish to do, which will also help keep you accountable to it, because once you've put it out there, it's pretty embarrassing to turn around and say, oh, I'm not traveling now, I'm not going to Portugal or whatever. So that will help you move towards your target as well. So it's been great to talk about this with you all. Thanks for being here, and if you have any questions or feedback, then just get in touch with me. The easiest way is on Facebook or on Skype, and I'll see you next week. This has been Become the Change with Sandy Levesque. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon.